If you're interested in supporting the channel, there are two things you can do. Flipside Gaming is offering a 10% discount for any order $10 or more if you use the promo code VOIDMAGE on their website. That is VOIDMAGE in all caps. I will also have an affiliate link to tcgplayer.com. If you use that link, any purchase you make on that website will go towards supporting the channel. I appreciate the support. Also hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Hello everyone, welcome back to another Commander deck tech video. Throne of Eldraine time yet again, and like most of my deck techs, I will have a link to it in the description below. There you'll be able to see the price, cards you're going to need. I don't go over every single card just because it would take me forever, and I don't really think I have to explain the value of playing things like Sol Ring or basic mountains, so I give you a pretty quick rundown over most of the cards in the deck. So this time I'm going to be doing Grumgully the Generous. He is a 3-mana, red and green, 3/3 legendary goblin shaman. Each other non-human creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter. Grumgully is probably one of the least talked about legendaries from this whole set. Some of that might have to do with the brawl decks that are overshadowing, because this guy's pretty cool. He's an uncommon, pretty easy to get, and while the ability looks to be pretty tame at first, it has a lot of combo potential. I was easily fooled at first, like I'm sure a lot of you were. Just a +1/+1 counter, nothing special. How crazy could that possibly be? I was originally thinking of simple interactions like Incubation Druid. More mana's fun, and you have an easy way of putting a counter on her, so you don't have to use the adapt ability. But as I go through this deck tech, you will see the craziness that is Grumgully the Generous. But first, let's start it off here with the lands. Again, not going over every single card, just the ones that are going to stand out that actually work with the mechanics. Karn's Bastion, Proliferate. While we don't necessarily care about proliferating, it's always nice to have the option. More counters is never really a bad thing. Same thing with Oran Reef the Vastwood. Pretty easy ways of getting even more +1/+1 counters on our creatures, because sometimes it is just a game about power and toughness. Now moving on to the creatures, we have about 31, and we have some sub-themes here. It's not just about the +1/+1 counters. We could also fool around with goblins, playing staples like Goblin Welder, Goblin Matron, as well as some newcomers like Krenko, 10th Street Kingpin, and Pashalik Mons. We have ways of taking advantage of the fact that Grumgully is a goblin. Since our goblins are going to be entering with +1/+1 counters, it's going to make it even more worth it to play token producers like Beetleback Chief and Siege Gang Commander. Now moving on from goblins, I did mention the interaction with Incubation Druid. There's also Devoted Druid, and while it doesn't really combo in a way to give you infinite mana, you could take advantage of -1/-1 counters and +1/+1 counters canceling each other out. So instead of a couple activations, you could use this ability 3 times. Just a very cool way to take advantage of this card to get us some more green mana. Now what is probably going to be the best thing for this deck is the persist mechanic. There aren't that many persist creatures within red and green, but there are just enough to make the combos viable. Persist can be really deadly if you have sacrifice outlets or just any kind of ETB trigger that's going to deal damage, because with Grumgully's ability, they're going to enter with a +1/+1 counter on them. Since persist only really cares about -1/-1 counters, those counters canceling each other out should make it so that they come back every single time you sacrifice them. So the ones we do have to play here are Lesser Manticore. This is a new one from Modern Horizons. Really in here because it's a cheap, colorless persist creature. It does have an ability where we can deal 1 damage to a target creature, so it makes a pretty sweet addition to this kind of deck. We have other ones that are a bit more costly in terms of mana. Airy Oaths is a pretty good way that we can get rid of our opponent's flying creatures, so it has a nice little way to sacrifice itself. Fury Stoked Giant is an awesome card for this kind of deck, so when it comes into play, other creatures we control gain tap. This creature deals 2 damage to target creature or player until end of turn. So in addition to any sort of combo potential, this is already a pretty good card. To go along with the goblin theme, there's also a Scuzzback Marauders. Nothing super special here, just trample to go along with the persist. Thunderblust is a hasty creature that can be pretty intimidating. Unfortunately, it probably won't have trample, given our Grumgully's ability to put +1/+1 counters on it, but a hasty 7/2 is still pretty good. And what might be the most well-known persist creature in these colors, Woodfall Primus. A whopping 8 mana, but it is totally worth it. It enters the battlefield and destroys a target non-creature permanent. So you can hit planeswalkers, you can hit lands, and if you get the combos going right, this should probably just win you the game. And before I go on to ways of sacrificing creatures and making these combos possible, I would like to go over some of the other creatures in the deck that are going to synergize with counters, because it is a nice little backup plan to have if everything else fails. Evolution Sage, we don't have a lot of land drops in here, but Proliferate is going to be nice, making our smaller creatures a little bit bigger. Rishkar Pima Renegade is another nice way that we could take advantage of +1/+1 counters, making it so that those creatures will tap for green mana. Armorcraft Judge's card draw on ETB, taking advantage of the total number of creatures you have with +1/+1 counters on them. And a disgusting combination here is Bloodspore Thrynax and Grumgully. You don't even have to devour creatures, and Bloodspore Thrynax will enter with the +1/+1 counter. So all of your creatures that are already going to get +1/+1 counters off of Grumgully are going to get even more with Bloodspore. Loyal Guardian doesn't do anything super special, but at the beginning of combat we get a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control if we have our commander. So moving on to our artifacts, we have some that are really just meant for that combo with Persist. Altar of the Brood is going to count whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under our control, so this is our mill strategy along with Altar of Dementia. These two cards, while we don't want to rely on mill because it doesn't always finish off certain opponents, they're really cheap and efficient ways of killing them off if we can get it. They're cheap, colorless artifacts that don't really require a lot. You just have to have your Persist creature, and with Altar of Dementia, you pretty much win the game with Grumgully. If you're just into sacrificing creatures, Spawning Pit's a nice card to have. Doesn't really have an ability that wins you the game, but having a free sacrifice is sometimes just enough in this deck. There's also a Blasting Station so that we can deal infinite damage to our opponents. Those creatures with Persist are going to be entering the battlefield, which will untap Blasting Station so we can sacrifice them all over again. And since Persist is probably the biggest thing in this deck, why not give any creature Persist with Cauldron of Souls? That way we can take advantage of other ETBs like Acidic Slime. Just a very good utility card that's pretty underplayed. It's even more reusable considering we can just put +1/+1 counters on those creatures when they enter. And we have some pretty good enchantments here that are going to help us out even more. Evolutionary Leap is a sack outlet, but it's really going to help us get to our other creatures, hopefully our combo pieces. Goblin Bombardment is yet another way we can win the game with a Persist creature and Grumgully, going to deal that infinite damage again. We also have Impact Tremors in addition to Perforos God of the Forge. In any kind of sack outlet, Grumgully, we should be able to deal, again, infinite damage. Greater Good is just a nice sack outlet to have. Even if we don't have the biggest creatures, it is a nice way to get some more card draw. And Warstorm Surge is just a nice card to have all around, but if we have our combos going, it is again another way we can deal infinite damage. Now the rest of the deck is going to be about acceleration, so we also have something like Fecundity. Whenever a creature dies, that creature's controller may draw a card. While it's not just one-sided, it does help your opponents out if they have any sort of infinite combo. We just want to draw a bunch of cards, and this should help us do it pretty quickly. We're also playing the awesome Guardian Project for that reason too. Guardian Project is an ETB trigger, which goes alongside other creatures that are going to help us draw, like Garruk's Pack Leader. There's also the Soul of the Harvest. Since we have easy ways of getting those creature ETBs, these are going to help us draw a ton. Inspiring Call is a dual-purposed instant. We draw a card for each creature we control with a +1/+1 counter on it, and those creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. So you can help save a creature that's in danger of being removed, or you can use it as a nice combat trick. And the final part that I want to talk about is our tutors. We want to be able to get the creatures that we want. We want to be able to get the creatures that are going to help us combo. We have Evolutionary Leap if we just want to leave it up to chance, just get any creature off the top of our deck. But we also have Eldritch Evolution and Shared Summons. Eldritch Evolution is a fantastic way that we can get a powerful creature from our deck straight onto the battlefield, and it's super flexible with the CMC. It's just X plus 2. It doesn't even have to be that specific converted mana cost. It can be less. And Shared Summons is just a nice way that we can get 2 powerful creatures. So if you wanted to get Perforos God of the Forge in addition to a Persist creature, you could further enable this strategy. But anyway guys, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think about Grumgully the Generous. One of the more underrated commander options, at least in my opinion. You all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.